Welcome to episode 42 of the Five Tool Podcast, joined once again by Drew Bishop. As always, we hope that you're staying warm. We hope that you have power. We have both of those two things right now. Let's hope that that continues throughout the next, 36 hours or so, because it's cold. And it's going to get a little bit colder, and it's probably not going to get above freezing until Saturday for a little bit. So let's hope we get out of this thing unscathed and we can actually get on with our high school baseball season. But last episode, we had our college baseball player draft with D1Baseball.com's Kendall Rogers. You can go to the Five Tool Twitter account, take a look at those rosters. We've got some cool graphics there with all the hashtags and stuff like that. Drew crushed us in the voting. I'm not surprised by that because he's got a lot of Texas followers and he drafted a ton of Longhorns and Skip Johnson guys. So he's kind of playing to his audience there. But Kendall, I don't know if Kendall even retweeted anything. Come on, Mr. College Baseball. You should have crushed us both in this draft. And
he told us he was putting it out there for weeks that he was just going to mop the floor with us.
Yeah. And he actually finished in last with only 16.2% of the Twitter vote. So Kendall, my man, that's a tough look for you. You should have pumped it out there and tapped into those crazy fan bases that always fill up your Twitter mentions all the time. And I laugh at, but Drew, what did you think of as you kind of compiled some statistics, if I can say that word correctly, with the rosters? What were kind of your thoughts as you were going back through and looking at some of these guys?
Well, it was amazing how even a lot of them were across the board. The separation was pretty slim when you add up the team average, the doubles, triples, home runs, and RBIs, which is what I did. I was a little surprised. I would have guessed that you would have had a little bit better power numbers.
Yeah, me too.
You had a little bit, you had a couple guys that just had absolutely, no power and more speed guys. So that, looking back at it makes a little sense. But I mean, you definitely, I think, had to have won on star power, I think, especially with that infield. I mean, that in real life, that infield's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just a couple guys that just didn't have the power numbers.
Trey Morgan's not, he's not huge. I think he's going to hit for more power this year, but he's not if I would, he's not Barry, in terms of smashing the ball out of the yard, all that.
Yeah,
that rate.
I didn't do stolen bases. I would have guessed that if I added those up, you'd probably have the lead there Trey Morgan stole 15 bases last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know Eric Kennedy stole a bunch. Mitch Daly stole a little bit. I don't know what kind of runner. The Arkansas guys just don't run a lot.
Yeah, they just typically hammer the ball out of the yard or in the gap. So they're not a big steal.
Yeah, no, you can't steal after a home run. But yeah, no, I was surprised. Kendall and I tied for the most home runs. We both had 93. However, I only had 8 batters with stats from last year because Rock Reggio is obviously a freshman, and Cade Horton didn't play last year because of an injury. But I did, I looked at some of the numbers, and that's how I made some of my choices. There were some guys that, if I'm being totally honest, I wouldn't have guessed had the numbers they did coming into the draft. But it's clear production. Guys like Gavin Dugas, 19 home runs and 66 RBIs. I would have never guessed that. I knew he had a good year, clearly, but I wouldn't have thought that the numbers were that impressive. But when you put them together, that LSU lineup, and the other wild card in it is that, Jay Johnson's a well-renowned hitting guy.
Yeah.
He's brought Jacob Berry with him. Cade Doty, that's another guy. I mean, he had 13 home runs and 55 RBIs. And it's not like this isn't the old box. Like the ball jumps out, or then the ball is not, it's just not a home run derby type field. But man, those LSU numbers are ridiculous. If they can pitch at all, I can't imagine they don't find their way to Omaha.
Yeah, that's a thing. I mean, they just have to find a little bit. Even if it's guys that can just eat up some innings and keep them in the games, because they're going to hit for sure. I'd be surprised if they don't end up being the best offense in that league.
Yeah, and you brought up it's just so deflating that Peyton Pillette went down. I mean, there's some question marks on the mound. I mean, we know that programs like LSU and Arkansas have a lot of talent, so I don't think that they're going to have a shortage of options. But the luxury of having some experience and knowing what you're getting from a good chunk of guys, I think like you hit the nail on the head. I think that's a big reason why Texas is ranked as high as they are in a lot of polls, just because of that sheer factor. What you're getting with the majority of that roster.
Yeah, I mean, if the least proven guy in that rotation is Tanner Witt, I mean, you're working with a lot there, and we know from our years, following the sport as closely as we did, proven strike throwers that can execute, like that's almost the name of the game. I know you get into the SEC and there'll be years where their Friday night guys are just like, you're like, whoa, I think I've faced a first rounder for like the last 10 weekends in conference play. I don't think that's going to be the case this year with that league, but that's typically how it is sometimes. But even still, like, you got to get to your Saturday and Sunday and have a proven strike thrower to where you're not taxing out your bullpen in a Saturday, and then you're throwing everything against the wall on a Sunday. So yeah, that's one thing. I mean, going back through and looking again, I mean, initially I was kind of like, man, it seems like the pitching's down, and looking back through, that's kind of confirmed my initial thought is, it's not difficult to find some intriguing proven hitters across the region, but in terms of arms, I mean, once you get through guys like Hansen and Campbell and guys like that, you're having to project some guys and hope those guys are not just guys that can miss bats, but actually guys that can miss strikes and log a full season and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's probably the main reason why Texas is number one is when you return quality strike throwers that have that track record of performance. That's usually how you can win a lot of games in college baseball. But man, it's knowing now that LSU team is going to be in Houston at the College Classic, that offense is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And we'll see who they match up with against Texas in that game when those two play. But man, it's going to be fun to watch those guys swing the bat on a pro field. It's just kind of, whenever you see those guys that are destined to be high draft picks on a pro field, it always adds a little juice and things like that. I remember seeing Bregman down there at the Houston College Classic, and I was like, whoa, this guy's just a little bit different than everybody else. But yeah, it's a lot of hitting in the region. We named so many guys from those teams that, the non-power 5 teams, there's a ton of really good hitters across all those teams in the region, but the pitching is there's just not as much of it as usual.
Looking at the roster, if you could take one guy off of each team to put on your roster, who would it have been?
I mean, I think the easy pick is you go with one of the big boppers in the first couple of rounds, but I had Jared McKenzie all queued up and ready to go. And yeah. I mean, I'm definitely light on outfield because we had a Google Sheet error. McLean kind of disappeared from my roster and I thought he was in there, but that was the guy that, like, he would have fit my outfield in my team construct perfectly. I mean, obviously, Jacob Berry would have been nice, but that's the dude I was like, man, I had him all ready to take and put him in the outfield. And as Kendall said when he took him, like, he's gotten to Baylor and just hit like immediately. And that's pretty rare. We see some really talented freshman hitters. I mean, it takes them some time to adjust, and didn't really take him any time. He was a stud right away.
Yeah. So that's who you would take from Kendall's team. Who are you stealing from my team?
I mean, I'd probably go on the mound. Knowing how the pitching went as we got through the draft. I mean, probably Pete, just because I know what I'm getting there. You know, the way he finished the season with the velocity coming back, and I know Sean Allen and those guys worked so much on getting him to stop kind of unintentionally cutting the ball and stuff like that, and getting his arm path in the right place. And it really showed at the end of the season. And I think you know what you're getting there from him in terms of innings, ability to get through a lineup 3 times, give your bullpen a rest, or set that tone on Friday night. That's probably where I'd go, just to have that proven left-handed starter in my rotation would have helped for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it too, if you take Pete and put him over in your roster, then you've got 2 guys between him and Fincher that are going to probably both be 100 inning plus guys. Then that can settle down some of the the guys in the back of the rotation for you, and and Birdsell too. Like, those are guys that have had a tendency of being wild in the past. And you can afford that a little bit more if you know that 2 of your 3 weekend slots are going to go pretty deep.
Ideally, you get the Sunday, and maybe you've used your back end, your main back end guy Friday, he's rested for Sunday, and it's like all these guys have eaten those innings, and it's like, I mean, people don't realize it's critical during conference play that you have starting pitchers that can give you length. Because if you start taxing that bullpen early on in the conference slate, it can get away from you. I mean, it can really wear on you. Those guys can tire down the stretch. I mean, keeping those guys fresh and keeping that usage in line is a huge piece of the puzzle. It's one of the reasons why Texas was so successful last year. I mean, they got a ton of length on Friday from Madden. Stevens on Saturday, 8 up innings. And it's like they got the Sunday, and it's like, okay, like, if we need to, like, we've got the full bullpen ready to go, but chances are we're probably not going to need to, because at that point Hansen had moved into to the rotation there, and even Witt's a guy that you could have extended. So it's a huge piece of college baseball. I mean, especially in the SEC, if you're running into a bunch of offenses like LSU and you're having to just try to survive on Friday, and even on Saturday too, you might get to Sunday and it's like, oh boy, we don't really have the arms. Who did you have taken from Kendall and my team to
just to kind of make it unfair, I would have probably grabbed Jace Young and put him at second, and taken Jacob Berry and put him at DH. I mean, then those collective numbers might have been a little bit skewed.
For sure.
In my favor. But I mean, putting those 2 guys who are arguably 2 of the best hitters in the country in the lineup that looks pretty enticing with what I've got on the mound.
Yeah, that's 2 guys competing for possibility of being 1-1 in that lineup. That's definitely gonna help for sure. But it's a fun exercise to get us kind of acclimated and ready for the college baseball season, which will be kicking off here in the near future. A couple weeks? I think 2 weeks from 2 weeks from tomorrow, I believe, is when things will get going there. And then of course they'll have those big tournaments, Houston College Classic early March down in Houston, and the other ones up in the DFW area. But speaking of getting going, I mean, we were looking forward to getting some eyes on some guys this weekend from the high school scrimmage level. I was texting around this morning to try to figure out if my scrimmage was actually going to happen, just because it's not really going to get above freezing much until Saturday. So I was planning on heading out and seeing Georgetown, Round Rock, and Waco Midway play Georgetown. Doesn't sound like that's going to happen right now. So
I was getting a little bit of FOMO from Jeff sending us videos from the games he went to. I was going to make it to one of those games, but had a little we had to redirect our daycare pickup options, so I wasn't able to make it, but started getting excited seeing some of those guys. And I mean, we saw some big name guys that came out of the chutes firing. We had the guys from Prestonwood, guys from John Paul too. I mean, we saw some good stuff from some elite players. We saw Team Bish member MJ So hit a home run and come in relief. Saw his little brother Minjay come in, and I mean, that was impressive. I mean, the stuff coming out of his coming out of his hand looked like real stuff. And for his age and this time of the year, it was pretty impressive. And then you got to look at another Team Bish member, Trenton Shaw from Prestonwood. I mean, the stuff looked pretty good early on. I mean, especially for a guy who's missed a lot of time recently, I think, with the foot injury and everything, but man, he looked ready to go. And that is a physical, intimidating presence on the mound.
Yeah. He, I think his performance was probably the most noteworthy, at least to me, because, we saw him in the fall. And it's one of the reasons why we always talk about take fall pitching stuff with a huge grain of salt. Because he was like 84 to 86 in the fall with the Blue Jays scout team. And he was coming off that Jones fracture, I believe in the summer, that kind of robbed him of some time in the summer, was trying to work his way back from that. And, you just don't know with these guys in the fall, like where they are, what they're trying to accomplish, that sort of thing. That's why I never make too big of a deal if guys' stuff and velocity is down, because he showed up his first outing and, from what Jeff told us in the video and stuff like that, it looked like he was up to 92 miles an hour and hanging out in the low 90s consistently, which at this point
from
of the
left
year,
side.
Yeah, from the left side, very physical from the left side. And at this point of the year to be doing that, I think is a great sign for the type of season he's going to, he's poised to have there on the mound. And he's a guy that can really swing it too. He's a fun guy to watch hit with his bat speed and stuff like that. But I think his upside and his future is probably on the mound. But yeah, it's like, okay, there it is, like low 90s stuff. I mean, the breaking ball, it's a pretty breaking ball. One of those visually pleasing ones that you get on the video, stuff like that. So I thought that was probably the most noteworthy one, because I was just curious. Like, I didn't get to see him in the summer because I think he had gotten hurt by the time I joined Five Tool. And then we saw him with the Blue Jay scout team at DBU. It's kind of, it was just kind of, getting some work in type thing, I think, trying to build back up. And to see what he did that first game for Prestonwood, I think was really noteworthy. And of course, the both Sale brothers are extremely talented. But like, I know sometimes parents get caught up in, wanting to compare their player to other players. Like, why is my son, a 2025 kid, not hearing from colleges, but this kid's already committed? It's like, because those kids are different. Like, and maybe your son will become that type of recruit, because there's still a ton of growing to happen. But right now, with that sort of size, length, athleticism, delivery, and like you said, Drew, the way the ball comes out of his hand with the angle it creates, and just like it's on a line, it's coming out and it is on a line with some angle, getting into the batter's box. And you don't see many high school freshmen that look like that. And that's why he's already committed to Vanderbilt, is because he's clearly in the top 1% of his high school class right now.
And he's one of those guys that's like at the area code tryouts, like a 3-pitch guy in the tryout.
Yeah. All right, you're done.
One of the years that I was, we were down a coach, so I was able to go out on the road, and one of the things I went to with was the area code tryout. We were at Weatherford Junior College, and there's a left-handed pitcher. Gosh, this must have been 2012. So I have to go back and look who that was, but he threw fastball from the left side. He was like 92. They're like, okay, another fastball, 93. They're like, all right, let's see a breaking ball, and threw just, nasty hammer. And they're like, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And that's all we need, and so he made the game. But yeah, I think Min-Jae has a chance to be one of those guys. I mean, it's, the frame is right. The athleticism is there. He's got the older brother. I mean, just being a Vanderbilt commit's gonna, draw some attention too. But
yeah,
the guy that really stole the show that game was newly committed to LSU, Derek Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some major bat speed there. He, when we were talking about, he reminded me, just the way he moves, he reminds me, like, I don't know, just the way he turned the bases. He reminded me of Cam Williams. Just, good looking athlete. He's faster than Cam was, but
yeah,
they had the same kind of, body lean and stuff like that when on the base pass. But man, there's some real bat speed there. And I think, he was 4 for 4 with 4 doubles. And I think that's a pretty good start.
Yeah, that's a loud way to start the season. And yeah, I'd mentioned, you brought up Cam Williams, and to me, I think that they have a lot of similarities. I think that Derek is more physical in terms of raw talent and tools is a little bit above what Cam was. But I think in terms of, the switch hitting, I think that working on the swing and miss aspect will be something that can really improve his development. Like Cam, when he got to Texas, he wasn't a heavily recruited JUCO guy out of Sanjak. And one of the reasons why is people were like, hey, we just don't know if he can hit that type of pitching. But what you knew for sure, and I think this is what, we know about Derek, and especially you being over there at JP2 some, the work ethic's there. And that's such a big part of the battle. And I think it's already showing with Derek there, just in terms of how, he's more physical now. He's clearly spent some time working on his body and stuff like that in the weight room. And he's a guy that loves to play. Cam Williams at Texas, you guys had to pull him out of the batting cage. It's like, all right, man, you can't hang out in here for 6 hours a day. Like literally, we got to take you out of the batting cage. And I think Derek has that sort of makeup thing working for him too. And he like I said, I think he's a little bit more talented than Cam Williams was. So like you said earlier on, man, when Jay Johnson takes a chance on a hitter, I think it's kind of like when you see Tim Tadlock and those guys grab a bat from around this area, your ears, you're kind of like, okay, we gotta pay attention to this guy. For sure. So when Jay Johnson makes a move and grabs Derek Mitchell, I think it was kind of noteworthy. But yeah, 4 for 4 with 4 doubles to start the season. Really impressive stuff. And you haven't seen any of this stuff, go to 5Tool on Twitter. Our guy Jeff did a fantastic job getting some awesome clips, and I think he published some of those on YouTube as well. So we're trying to do a little bit more in terms of our YouTube content, in both with the podcast form and also kind of like highlight type stuff as well. So make sure you're subscribed there and check us out there to kind of catch maybe those longer highlight type stuff. And when you're 4 for 4 with 4 doubles like Derek Mitchell was, you can create a nice little reel for yourself. But a ton of talent on that JP2 team. And Prestonwood too. We didn't mention Terrace Murray. Looked like he was swinging the bat pretty well. The sock game was interesting. a lot of swag with the Sox, but I'm okay because he's really fast, and fast guys can pull that off. You and I certainly could not, but certainly Terrace could. But
do you remember a guy that was our age or maybe a year older than us that was like the number 1 safety in the country, guy named from Plano West named Vakil Vaughn? They went to Arkansas.
I don't think so.
Well, anyways, he played baseball for Plano West, and we were playing them. And strangely enough, so I threw a no-hitter in this game, but we won 8-5. This is when I was hurt. I was already hurt, and I just kept pitching through it because we didn't realize it was Tommy John. They told me it was tendonitis, and they were like, if you can keep pitching, go for it. So I did, but I didn't have my normal control. Yeah. So I walked probably like double-digit guys.
You had Missouri extreme weather control.
Yeah. No, I was putting some of those balls a little too close to the plate. But no, Vakil courtesy ran. I don't know if they still do that, but they had a courtesy runner for the catcher, and Vakil gets out there. It was early. Well, probably early district, and they put him in to run, and he had no socks on and had his pants pulled up to his knees, and I think I ended up picking him off, but you're right. Like, you knew he was fast, so it didn't bother you quite the same way that it might if it was the guy that couldn't run.
If you rolled out there doing that as a pinch runner, people would have laughed you out of the stadium. But if guys like that do it, like that are legitimately extremely fast and like really impressive athletes, like It's like growing up when you see the guy that doesn't have the batting gloves, but he's got like the worker gloves, like the gardening type gloves. It's like, oh, hold on, man, this guy probably can hit a little bit for sure, because there's not many guys that wear those.
There's no in between. The guys with the work gloves can either
they mash or they strike out every time.
Yeah. Don't make contact.
They punch out every time, but. Yeah, it's I was getting FOMO too. I was like looking at our on my schedule and was like, man, I don't have anything around here until the 5th. You know, and I think unfortunately a lot of stuff's going to get canceled around here, but Monday it'll certainly pick up. Monday, Tuesday. I mean, once Monday hits, there's kind of something almost like every day for a while. It's just kind of a matter of picking and choosing where you want to go and playing the weatherman game and figuring out if you're going to get rained on or frozen or anything like that. But yeah, some really loud performances for some big names to start the season up in the DFW area, both from John Paul II and Prestonwood as well. And I was kind of scrolling through Twitter and, you know, there's some loud highlights already. It seems like the private schools are kind of out there playing a little earlier on than the public schools are. But shout out to my guy, JD Crisp down at Second Baptist. I came across that swing it's one of the few times I was actually okay with Twitter's algorithm, because they kind of put stuff in your feed based on things you like. So me liking a lot of high school baseball player stuff and things like that, it just popped in my feed. And he's a 2024 switch hitter from Second Baptist, and he hit a ball from the left side that was a no doubt bomb, and it's a beautiful swing. And I've got Second Baptist on my schedule already because of Ty Baker, 2023 5-tool 55 guy who's committed to Texas A&M, one of the best right-handed pitchers in the state. Got them on the schedule when they play Concordia Lutheran later in the I think in April or something like that. But I was like, man, I'm even more excited to see Second Baptist now, and that's, you know, it kind of is it's something I think we kind of make our schedules knowing, you know, with the 22s and the 23s, and we try to, as best we can, pick the games that feature the most talent. But one of the reasons why it's so fun to go out and see these games when you make them, the schedules or whatever, is because you're going to see guys like that at these games too. You know, like you're going to see the 2024 crop and kind of who's next, or those 2023s that maybe weren't big time varsity guys last year, but now they are, and they're in a different role, and they've grown, and their skills developed and things like that. And I think early on in the season, you know, we'll see what these arms look like, because a lot of these guys are going to get built up. So I'm not always as concerned from the arm side about, hey, you know, what's the velocity look like, you know, because a lot of these guys are going to throw 30, 40 pitches and be done with it. But you can kind of see, you know, early on some talent that kind of jumps out in a loud way, because you know, the best players I think are ready to perform now. You know, like it doesn't take them 2 months to get ready and start hitting or things like that. Like they're going to hit right now. So it's just one of the many things I think we're looking forward to when we go out and watch these games beginning hopefully next week, weather cooperating.
Yeah. I mean, well, there was another one too. I think it was Kason Evans from St. Pius. Saw some.
Oh, the righty.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Who was up, I think, like 90 or 92 or something like that.
Yeah. It was impressive from what I saw. Didn't get a ton of it, but what was shown, I asked around a little bit, and people definitely aware of him. He's another private school guy down in Houston that, you know, got off to a good start. Yeah, I mean, at least, you know, put some good stuff on film.
Yeah. Is it just me, or is private school baseball getting like noticeably better?
You know, I think
I think it's always been pretty solid, but it seems like now more. I mean, it's just like seems like every school now's got a guy, like at least one.
Yeah. There's definitely some options when we're going through these schedules.
Yeah.
But there's some big time talent in both Dallas and Houston, and when it comes to their private schools.
Yeah.
But, so you know, one of the things that I'm looking forward to when we get out and start going to these games is I want to know where we're supposed to eat before the game or after it, depending on the time. but I was, ESPN does their taste of the town. I was trying to come up with a clever name for our eating segment.
Because we're gonna have to include that in our coverage, is like where we ate, assuming there was time to have an adequate, appropriate,
right,
type meal. Like, do you eat before games or after games? I guess it totally depends on the time, but
yeah.
Because you can't be crushing a big old
we
home cooking type meal in some small town and then go try to sit for 7 innings, and when we
typically eat dinner between 4:30 and 5 in our house.
Oh, okay.
So I have no problem eating early.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't know. You got any suggestions on the like five tool flavors?
Oh, going the 5-tool flavor town, like our what's his face, Guy Fieri.
Yeah.
It's very
I didn't know that was yeah.
Oh yeah. His thing is Flavor Town, like
Flavor
Town and stuff like that. Yeah, 5-tool Flavor Town. There it is. It's people will be like, oh, Guy Fieri, but I guarantee you it's going to be stuck in their head, and that's what matters.
Okay.
Hashtag 5-tool Flavor Town.
Yeah. Anything else? 5-tool treats.
5-tool foodies.
Ooh,
that's pretty good.
Ooh,
that's pretty good. I think that might be the leader in the clubhouse right now.
Yeah, maybe that's our poll.
Yeah, 5-tool. Yes. Select. Yeah, that's a great poll. Today's poll will give you options to select how we label our food, our food adventures on our various travels around the state while we're watching a lot of these games. And because I don't know about you, but once I figure out, okay, I'm going to this game, I'm going to these games this week, there are 2 things. There are 3 things I look at. First, the route. I get on Google Maps, like, all right, what are things looking like here? What do I need to leave? What's the best way to get there? So on. Secondly, do they have a local coffee shop nearby? I really enjoy trying like non-Starbucks local coffee places that I've never been to before. I do it when I travel. I do it when I go to games. I do it whenever. Although I always get roped into the Hillsborough Starbucks when I'm going back and forth from DFW. There's just not anything right off the highway there that's non-Starbucks. So have to jump in there.
We actually stopped. There's a little place in Waco, right in a little kind of square area by Cricket's called like Bo and Biddy's.
Okay.
We stopped there on the way back from Austin last week. It was pretty cool. But I did notice with Waco's ascension, with Waco going up, Hillsborough went down. Hillsborough used to be like the place to stop between Austin and Dallas, and it's kind of a ghost town now.
Yeah, it is.
There's a couple of cool little places in that little downtown Waco area.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's I forget when I was down there last. Down there for something. I ended up going to a coffee shop over there, but yeah, Hillsborough usually would get me going towards Dallas, stopping off at that Love's right there where the Starbucks and stuff is, or coming back. Like I'm a sucker for Chicken Express a lot of time. Fried okra. There are not many places that have fried okra, and that's a big favorite of mine. Always has been since I was little. Of course, not exactly the non-chain option, but it's still really, really good. But yeah, I look at my route, I look at the coffee shops, and then I go and find like what are the restaurants around here, like what's kind of, and yeah, I do some Yelp scouting. All right, it doesn't totally determine my decision, but
this is why we need
an idea of what my options are to see if I kind of throw some things out there. Who are great people to talk to about this are pro scouts. Like I feel like they all have an encyclopedia of places.
So this is a 2-part process for the food. We need to know what kind of concessions we're working with.
Okay.
And then what kind of places are close by, because I don't remember who was telling me, maybe Brooks, but somebody was telling me that like Arlington Martin has this special, I don't know, a hot dog, or I think it was a hot dog. But he was like, every time we played at Martin, like that's what I would get. And I was like, wait a minute, you were eating during the game? Like he was like, well, it was like a tournament, in between games or something. It's like, okay, whatever. But I mean, obviously their decisions as high school athletes are much different than the ones we have to make now. But with all this cold weather, I was thinking, like, what's your go-to snowed in food?
We just made a big thing of soup. It's probably like soup, chili, gumbo, but probably soup. Like, I don't know about a specific one. Like, Liz makes a good one that
you got to pick one.
Has a bunch of like different types of beans and corn and like ground turkey and stuff like that. A lot of really healthy stuff, but it's good. I don't know. I crush some ramen on occasion. It's always a little good with the cold weather, but I drink so much coffee that kind of fulfills a lot of my warmer type stuff. I have a rule though, like I won't drink warm coffee unless it's under like freezing. Like I am a cold drink guy, so I had to bust out the warm stuff today, but probably just like a soup or a chili or a gumbo, nothing specific. I feel like in your head you've got like 10 of them you're about to rattle off. Like on Monday I'll do this, Tuesday this, Wednesday and this and this.
Well, it's funny you say that, because like going back to the traveling, whenever we decide we're going on vacation, our vacation starts with picking the restaurants. Like I'll build in every meal and then we'll figure out what else we're gonna do on vacation around those. So
smart. That's why you gotta do it.
I mean, that's always my first question. We can go anywhere and do just about anything on a vacation as long as I can find meals to eat throughout the day that are, non-chain and, look good.
But now, like when you go back to those same places, do you eat at those same places? Like, do you have your favorites in respective places you travel to?
Yeah. Well, yes, if they're good enough. Like if they a lot of times they're the kind of the famous or touristy places, but if they're good enough, definitely go back. I'm always a go with what kind of guy. I'm not, as I'm not super adventurous, especially when it comes to eating. But if I had,
unless it involves pumpkin spice,
if it says pumpkin or lemonade flavor on it, like I'll buy it at least.
Now, when you when I drive to Houston, I guess where we live now, it always take me 290, but where I used to live, it'd take me I-10, and or when I drive to Dallas, I feel like there's always a good kolache place on drives. Like, is that?
Well, the thing that, but the thing
like
that's
in West or Huescas and I forget the town name, because it's like that's all it is that little red light there.
I think the thing that's hurt that the most is Buc-ee's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
But I won't stop at a Buc-ee's unless it's on my side of the highway. Like I'm not exiting, doing the U-turn type thing, because now you go to them and it's like there's 1,000 people there every single time. Unless you're stopping at the Giddings, like OG tiny one, there's not really ever many, like, always busy, but you don't have to worry about spending 15 minutes parking or whatever. But
just a heads up, our power seems to be flickering.
I noticed a flicker there, so we might need to wrap this up pretty quick here. But our vote today will be picking how we label our food adventures. And if you have any, if you're from Dripping Springs or Arlington Martin or down in Smithson Valley or whatever it is,
I think that needs to go out. That needs to go out on Twitter today.
I'll tweet it out.
We need to start collecting options there for
once we get our official hashtag, that way people can tag foodies. It. Well, if it wins, I think
we need the poll first.
Five tool Flavor Town might get some votes from the Guy Fieri fans out there, but we'll be hopefully weather cooperating next week. I'm looking at my kind of tentative schedule right now. There's definitely something Monday. Definitely something on Tuesday, perhaps even Wednesday as well. And then I think when we get to that Friday, there's a ton of stuff going on across the street, across the state, as guys really gear up those scrimmages and try to get built up before those pre-district tournaments get going that last weekend in February, which there's a lot of big ones. I'm already looking forward to. I think there's going to be 20 or 21 teams at that Georgetown Round Rock tournament down here, which list of teams. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch those guys for sure. But well, that wraps up today's episode of the 5-Tool Podcast. Let's get out of here while Drew still has power. Fingers crossed you guys out there have power as well, are staying warm. If you have to travel today, be careful. If your neighborhood's like mine, everything already closed for the most part. So, gonna have to hang out inside with the little ones and get a lot of stuff done and things like that. But thanks for listening to episode 42. Get the Podbean, hit the subscribe button there. YouTube, 5-Tool on YouTube. We're gonna be pumping out a lot of coverage on there. Of course, Apple Podcasts as well. And make sure you're following us on all the social media platforms: 5-Tool, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I mean, it's going to be a lot. I feel like the high school coverage just got going. I think it's going to be nonstop until probably like May or June. And then it'll be the summer season before we know it. So thanks for tuning in. Get to our Twitter page and cast your vote today and send us those food suggestions as we get out on the road and see a lot of these high school players. Until then, take care.